Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 9 of the Pitchside Podcast. Today I'm joined by Kieran Harm.
Hello.
And Matthew Cooper.
Hello.
Today we'll be talking about the final day of the Premier League season where European places and relegation places were confirmed. Also, we'll be looking at the frantic last day of the Championship that took place last week where the 3 relegated teams were confirmed, also the playoff places. And we'll also be looking at the current state of the EFL and whether football needs a reset. But, as I said, we shall start with the famous last day of the Premier League football. It's sort of a day we look forward to and sort of not look forward to every year, because obviously the final day usually is normally quite entertaining, brings up some unexpected moments, but also it also marks the end of the season and we have to wait a few weeks for the new season to start, weeks without football. But I digress. And we'll start with the sort of the game with the highest stakes on Sunday, which was Leicester versus Manchester United. It was one of those games where it was entertaining, but because of it wasn't a great game, but that was because you could tell both teams were nervous and mistakes were made. The quality wasn't bad, but sort of the quality was not very good, but the entertainment levels were high. But in the end, Manchester United got the 2-0 win from a penalty through Bruno Fernandes and a late goal from Jesse Lingard. But did we watch that game, boys? Because obviously on the last day, I know you were, Kieran, we were all doing that thing where you watch 3 different games at once, especially with all 10 being on TV this time. Yeah, as I said, Kieran, both teams looked pretty nervous in that game. There's a few slips from defenders in both teams. But in the end, Manchester United came out on top. Do you think they deserved to in that one?
Yeah, I didn't think Leicester really offered that much, to be honest. I think for the game itself, I thought it was kind of stale for a lot of it. It was sort of anticlimactic, but I guess we were kind of expect that it was going to be tense and tight given how much was on the line. Yeah, I thought Manchester United were good value for their win. I don't think they had many massive standout performances. I think maybe Brandon Williams at left back, thought he had a good game. I think it was the worst I've seen Bruno Fernandes play so far. He's obviously had a massive impact on the team, but he didn't offer all that much on Sunday. But yeah, I think overall United were pretty good. Leicester really couldn't get anything going. They didn't do a whole lot of attacking. I think one thing to know from Manchester United's perspective that they are going to need to sort out was, even in a game where he was barely challenged, De Gea still looked dodgy as hell. So I think, yeah, there's definitely a few things to sort out, and it did highlight a few more things. But yeah, it was an alright game. Man, you deserved the win. Good to see Jesse Lingard, pretty much the last kick of the season, finally gets his goal, which I saw down somebody's bet. Somebody had like a bet where they would have won a few £100 for Jesse Lingard not to get a goal or an assist in this Premier League season. Yeah. Obviously, got put down with the last kick of the season.
Yes, he was a Liverpool fan as well, I think.
Oh, of course it was. Of course it was. Matt, for what I could see in that game, both defences played pretty deep. I'm guessing because with both sides, with Manchester United having Martial and Rashford and Leicester City having Jamie Vardy, both sort of sets of strikers that like to run in behind the defenders. But I think the difference was Manchester United, they had more players closer to the attack. With Jamie Vardy was very isolated up there for Leicester, wasn't he? So they would just kick the ball forward and it would just go to Vardy, and he just couldn't really hold it up, could he?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's sort of the thing with Jamie Vardy is normally, you can do that. He can be a bit isolated, and then it just takes that one real clear-cut chance and he'll punish you. But he just, like you said, he just didn't really get that one clear-cut chance. I think they were looking to, I think they were sort of waiting for, both teams looked like they were sort of waiting for the other to really throw the first sort of real punch, and neither really did. And then, there was just a penalty, and then Leicester sort of had to chase the game, and then just nothing really happened for them. And it sort of summed up how both teams have been sort of post restart. Man United got, don't want to say they got a bit of luck with the penalty, but they had a bit of luck in they got the goal when sort of neither team were really threatening, and Leicester didn't. It's just sort of the way it's gone for both sides post lockdown. And who would have thought that Man United would be finishing top four and Leicester would be missing out when Leicester were flying high earlier this season. They looked nailed on for third, but Europa League football it is for them next season, and Man United have managed to work their way into the Champions League.
You were speaking on Leicester. I saw a stat that from their remaining 19 games, so the second half of the season, they only won 23 points. And as you say, and at the restart, when lockdown came in, there were 9 points clear of fourth in that third place position, and then ended up finishing in fifth. Kieran, what do you think that second half of the season sort of out of form goes down to? What do you think went wrong for Leicester in that second half of the season, or especially after the lockdown, after the restart?
I don't know. I think it's quite difficult to sort of put it down to just one particular thing. Leicester, I think it's one thing that Brendan Rodgers has always struggled with. I think over his time as a manager, particularly in the Premier League, is adapting when teams sort of figure out what he's doing. He's very, very set in his ideals. He'll play the way he wants to play, and that won't change, even when he eventually does get found out a little bit. I mean, it happened at Leicester. It happened at Swansea. It happened at Liverpool to a certain extent. I think it happened at Celtic as well, maybe, but they were still winning games because it's Celtic and it's a pub league. But yeah, I think maybe what you might have seen in the second half of this season was that happening again. I guess it's up to them to sort of prove us wrong next season. But if they start next season in a similar way, then that's all I can put it down to is Brendan Rodgers' refusal to adapt when the tough gets going.
Matt, so Manchester United finishing in third. Do you think, obviously, there's been talk that maybe they're on the start of something of maybe winning the league in the next few years or so. Do you think they can win it under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, or do you think they need a better manager?
It's kind of difficult to say, really, because on paper, if this was anyone but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a club legend as a player, he wouldn't get anywhere near the job. It's difficult because there's not really too much we really know about him tactically. He's got a couple of ways of playing. He sets up. He's done quite well against the big teams, setting up for the counter. But I think when you're at a club like Man United, you just need to be someone that gets the sort of the really good players that you're going to get at a club like Man United to just want to play for you. And I just think sometimes it helps that you're a club legend and they respect you. So I don't know. It might, you think when you compare him to a guy like Klopp or Guardiola at Liverpool and City, they're definitely more tactically astute and they've got a better track record. So you would think that while managers like that are at their rivals, then he would struggle, because when you get to a point where there's so many good players and there's so many good teams, which we do have in the Premier League, then it's the little things that make the advantage. And if you've got someone with that eye for just the little things in a game, like a Klopp or a Guardiola, then you would think they would have the edge over Solskjaer. But I think he's going to have to rely a lot on his backroom team and the people he surrounds himself with. So it's very difficult to judge. We just haven't seen enough of Solskjaer as a manager yet.
We'll look down at the other end of the table, where the three relegated teams were confirmed. And team that ended up finishing 19th was Watford, after a very, very turbulent season of three managers four managers, I should say, well, three permanent managers being sacked and only getting 34 points. They were condemned to the Championship after a 3-2 defeat to Watford, to Arsenal. Sorry, Kieran, where do we start with Watford this season? I mean, from top to bottom, it just hasn't been good enough on the pitch and off it. It seems.
Yeah, if Watford are going to be able to progress as a club, they're going to have to stop this ridiculous hiring and firing wheel that they've got going on. What we saw in the last couple of, who the hell sacks the manager with 2 games left? I know there was rumoured to have been some sort of rift between Pearson and the ownership, but you just don't do that. It is eventually what's got them sacked, really. So if they want to progress as a club, if they want to come back up, if they want to then maintain themselves as a Premier League side, they're going to have to find something that suits, find a manager that works, and, well, just start showing a little bit of loyalty to the man in charge. I thought since he's came in, I think Pearson's actually done quite a decent job. They looked dead and buried before he came in, and since he came in, he gave them hope, and it looked for all the world as though they were going to stay up until he got sacked, and then with 2 games left, it went down the toilet, really, didn't it? So yeah, I feel sorry for Pearson, whatever he's done. There was rumours that he might have punched Adam Messina, which I don't think was true. But I heard then there was a rumour that he had fallen out with the owner over the owner basically leaning on him to play younger players that they can sell on rather than the experienced ones like Deeney. I don't know. I guess we'll probably not find out what actually happened for a while, but yeah, they need to stop that sort of just rotating door of constant managers. They just need to find one and stick with it.
Yeah, and I think the issue with when, like, it's all well and good as the owner saying that, no manager is bigger than the club, we can just install whoever we want. But it gets to a point where you're going to struggle to attract really good managers because they aren't going to want to go and manage Watford for 6 months and then get sacked.
And the team that ended up finishing in 18th was Bournemouth. Despite an impressive 3-1 win on the final day, they were certainly fighting for their lives. But in the end, it just wasn't enough. And for me, I try and look throughout the season and just try and pinpoint a moment or pinpoint a certain part of where they went wrong. But I think it's just one of those cases they just weren't good enough this season.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of argue with that. I think throughout, you look at that team, they've got a lot of very good players. They've got a lot of good players who I think they are going to struggle to hold on to over the next couple of months in the window. But for some reason, they just couldn't get it going. I don't know whether it was injury struggles or if they just couldn't find the right formation or if there was just one sort of missing cog in the midfield. But Callum Wilson didn't look a shadow of his normal self this season. Josh King, whenever I saw him play, didn't look great. Ryan Fraser just looked like he wanted to leave.
And he did.
And he did. So, yeah, I don't exactly know what's gone wrong. Maybe it's something behind closed doors, behind the scenes that's happened there. But they just didn't look themselves, really. They looked an absolute shadow of the team that we've seen in the Premier League for the last 4 years. So, yeah, it's a shame. I like Bournemouth. I'd like them to stay up.
Matt, do you see this as could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise for Bournemouth, because they've got some highly sought-after players in that Bournemouth squad that are probably looking to maybe leave, and they could get some big money for them. Likes of Nathan Ake, Callum Wilson, Josh King, who we're alluding to, they could probably get a few million for those, and surely that will hold them in good stead for the future and possibly coming back up with seasons to come.
Yeah, I guess it's just in terms of how they reinvest that money, because I think we've seen with their transfer business since they've been in the Premier League, it's been rather hit and miss, to say the very least. Spent big on quite a few players, specifically ones from Liverpool that haven't quite hit. But, I think it all depends on how many go. Like you said, I think Ake's pretty much gone, and Wilson will probably move on, but there's sort of other guys in that mix that you look at and you think could get a move or could stay. It's guys like maybe Ramsdale or someone like Brooks maybe that could perhaps stay for like another season or two. It's just how sort of gutted that squad gets, and like I said, how they reinvest. That's always the key.
Well, we'll end on Aston Villa, who managed the Great Escape, if you could say. Of course, our mate Harry is very delighted. I think what done it for them in the end is obviously they picked up a little bit of form towards the end of the season. I think, was it 8 points in their last 4 games they collected? To say, with 6 or 5 games to go, they look dead and buried. I mean, it may have been 3 to 6 points adrift, but managed to pick up some vital points in the end, especially that home win against Arsenal in their penultimate game. But Kieran, it seems the controversy of the beginning of the restart has sort of played into their benefit in the end. Managed to stay up on that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, this is how it goes, but you can understand why Bournemouth feel aggrieved about this. I was reading this morning that Bournemouth, I think, are considering taking legal action against the goal line technology providers for it not working, because it has. That's the reason essentially why they've been relegated. And I know a lot of Aston Villa fans have been quick to point out, well, this happened to us in this game, well, that happened to us in this game. The difference was all of those decisions were very subjective and very open to referee's opinion. This wasn't. This was a blatant, clear and obvious goal that wasn't given because some idiot had forgotten to turn on the goal line technology at the start of the game. That's it. It's as simple as that. That one was as clear cut as it gets. The handball against Arsenal and numerous other decisions where they should have had maybe should have had penalties or whatever are all still open to interpretation for referees and stuff like that. And you can put them down to the referee, maybe not quite thinking it was a penalty. Either way, it wasn't 100% definitely this was a mistake. This one was. That's why it's such a big deal. That's why Bournemouth fans are so enraged about it, because that point is the reason why Bournemouth are currently getting set to play in the Championship next season, because the goal difference, Bournemouth would have stayed up if it wasn't for that extra point. So, yeah, I fully understand Bournemouth's rage. I do understand why the Villa fans are saying, but what about this? What about that? But the fact of the matter is, Villa should be in the Championship right now, and that is the reason. That goal that wasn't given is the reason why.
Yeah, I think we said it in the podcast right after it happened, that just hope upon hope that it doesn't come down to a situation where that goal not being given is the difference between relegation. Unfortunately, it has been. So it's a tough break for Bournemouth, but there's just, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. It sounds weird to say it's just one of those things, but unfortunately it is.
It's when you start getting into realms like that where people are going to start questioning, well, maybe should the FA maybe or the Premier League have the ability to award a goal post game if there's something that's that clear and obvious. So maybe that game, which was a draw, could have then been changed to a Sheffield United win. I mean, I'm not in favour of that, because the game would have been a totally different game if Sheffield United had taken the lead there, because Aston Villa would have come out and played a totally different way of playing in the second half. So I'm not in favour of that, but that this kind of thing does incite that kind of debate, and it's not what the Premier League wants. But yeah, it is. It, like you say, it's unfortunately one of those things. But I can understand why Bournemouth are very, very, very much aggrieved about it and looking to get some sort of recompense for
it. Matt, do you think now that Villa are staying up, do you think they'll be able to keep hold of Jack Grealish?
Such a difficult question to answer, that, isn't it? Because I think a lot of it just comes down to what Jack Grealish wants. And, he's club captain, he's from, he's from the area, loves the club and everything. So, that's sort of it's a difficult decision to make when you've got such an affinity for a club. But, is there a better way to leave your boyhood club than, you help get them back to the big time and then you help them stay there? I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's going to come down to what Jack Grealish wants more than anything else. Because, if this was any other player at any other club that they didn't have that sort of affinity for, you'd say, oh yeah, they're gone no matter what. But it's that local ties. It's so different in football as to anything else. So I don't know. It's very, very difficult. Jack Grealish is going to have to do a long, hard think over this rather shorter summer break.
I think it comes down to more than that. Personally, I think it comes down to not just what Jack Grealish wants, but what the teams who can afford him want. Because if you actually look at it, Liverpool don't need him, Manchester City don't need him, Manchester United don't need him, Chelsea don't need him, Tottenham could probably maybe, but don't really need him. And Arsenal are the only one who I think are in that bracket that can probably afford to pick him up this summer, who could actively do with him. So I think it comes down to more than what Jack Grealish needs, what Jack Grealish wants, but also the needs of the teams around them. Because in the current climate, teams are not going to be looking at what's Jack Grealish going to cost, somewhere around 50 million, given his season performances this season. That seems around about the right price. At least that's what Villa are going to be wanting, something like that, maybe even more than that. But
I saw this morning that Villa could possibly want up to 80 million for him, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, but the point of that is to put other teams off, though, isn't it? It's to put other teams off. That's why people say that. He's not worth that. Of course he's not, but he's worth that to Villa. So I do get that. But yeah, that for that reason, for the simple fact that I can't see many teams looking to spend 80-odd million pound on players this summer, and none of the teams in the traditional top six, apart from maybe Arsenal, actively really, really need him, then I think you might end up staying at Villa next season. I think Jack Grealish will stay at Villa now that they're in the Premier League. At least I think if they'd been relegated, teams would have been sniffing around looking for a cut price deal. But now that Villa have stayed in the Premier League, and he's going to be playing Premier League football next season either way, I think he'll stay where he is.
Right, we shall move on to Odd One Outs game, which we play every week. I'll give you 4 names, and you have to pick out the odd one out, and also give me the reason why for an extra 2 points. So the 4 players this week, the 4 players we are going for are Scott Dan, who I saw in an airport on my way to Magaluf last year.
Lucky you.
So the only reason you included him in this, so you could drop that story?
Just Philip Billing, Rob Green.
This feels like it's got a championship flair to it.
And Leroy Fer. So those players are Scott Dan, Philip Billing, Rob Green, and Leroy Fer.
Right. Okay, I like that. I've got 1 or 2 ideas already.
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas.
4 players you didn't expect to hear in the same sentence, but that's what this game's all about.
Start with a 5-a-side team, Matt.
Exactly. He's sticking up top there. Yeah. Darren Bent, probably. Right, we shall move on to the aforementioned championship, which came to a close last Wednesday, in a very dramatic day. I mean, for me personally, it's probably one of the best and most dramatic final days in the championship we've had for a long, long while. It was just a huge shame that obviously there was no fans there. But I think we shall start. I don't even know where to start. We'll go with the top 2. We'll start with the top 2, where in the end, it was West Brom that won promotion after a 2-2 draw with QPR, and Brentford losing at home 2-1 to Barnsley. And Kieran, even before we started, you said you did not want West Brom to come into the Premier League. Explain why.
It's honestly, it's nothing against them. It's just that they're boring. I was kind of hoping to get a few more like newer teams in the Premier League this season. Maybe get some new stadiums in FIFA and stuff like that. I'm just Bournemouth, West Brom are just one of those teams that just up and they're down and they're up and they're down. The likelihood is within the next 2 years they'll be down again. They're not a particularly exciting team. It's not a very nice place to go for an away day. It's just isn't it? It's like Leeds. Leeds getting promoted. People are going to get excited about that because it's Leeds. They're a massive club who haven't been in the Premier League for 16 years. I don't particularly like Leeds. Nobody likes Leeds, if we're being honest with ourselves. I don't even think Leeds like Leeds. But if you're actually looking at it, it's a big team. It offers some sort of excitement. Elland Road's back in the Premier League. Leeds United are back in the Premier League. It's a lot of history and stuff like that. West Brom don't offer that. I would much prefer to see teams like Nottingham Forest come up, or who I haven't seen in the Premier League, or somebody totally new like Brentford, who I was really annoyed at because they blew two absolute gilt-edge opportunities to get that second automatic promotion spot in the last few weeks. So, yeah, I don't know. That's my reasoning. That's it. I don't have anything against West Brom. They're just sort of meh, really.
Yeah, because Brentford were pretty much, since their return after the lockdown, they were very much the form team in the Championship, and they looked set on course to take that second automatic promotion spot. But then they lost their last two games to Stoke and Barnsley. Do you think that was just cold feet? Do you think when it really came down to it, they just didn't have that cutting edge?
Yes. It's weird, isn't it? There was sort of a thing where, it was like those top teams just sort of didn't want to win almost, it felt like. The Fulhams and obviously Brentford and West Brom were sort of struggling to get results. And yeah, I don't know. It's weird because you can't really just sort of put it down to just Brentford, because it was all those other teams around them in the mix as well that started dropping points. It was, I don't know whether it was a consequence of the restart or just the pressure, or not having your fans there to will you on. I don't know. It's a weird one, but obviously they're up against a team like Barnsley on the final day, who were basically playing for their future in the Championship. So it was always going to be a tough ask when you've got a team with everything on the line, and Stoke as well sort of in that mix. So you'd look on paper that they're playing teams sort of bottom of the table. They should win it, but they're teams with as much on the line as Brentford did. So yeah, it's one of the great things about the Championship is, you can be top of the table all season, play team bottom of the table all season, and they beat you. It's just one of those things about the league. It's great.
I think we'll move on to probably which was the maddest permutation of the evening, was the final playoff spot, which was somehow won by Swansea, who needed to not only win but overturn a 5-goal deficit, and they'd done it with a game to spare. Kieran, have you ever seen anything like that? Maybe a sort of a capitulation in one match from Nottingham Forest, if you were following the last day. I'm guessing you were, because even for a neutral, that was something special.
Yeah, I did follow, and what on earth are Nottingham Forest doing there? It just looked like, for all the world, as though those 4 playoff spots were nailed on. I think it was 5 or 6 goal swing, like you said. Swansea needed, plus they needed to hope Nottingham Forest didn't pick up any points in a game against Stoke, who, let's be honest, haven't pulled up any trees this season. And I don't even know what to say, really. It was just that ridiculous. It just feels like Nottingham Forest I don't think they're ever going to get promoted at this rate. They've just been getting progressively worse. I mean, the last 6 games, they didn't win any of them. I think they picked up 3 draws and 3 losses in the last 6 games. It's just they've been slipping down and down and down anyway. So
because they looked nailed on before the lockdown, they looked nailed on for a playoff spot. I think they were many points clear, many points safe in the playoffs, but then say a bad run of form towards the end of the season, and they've missed out. And Matt, with Swansea, I don't think anyone sort of predicted at the start of the season that they would get into a playoff spot. Of course, losing Ollie McBurney in the summer and not really replacing him, I don't think. And obviously, with a brand new manager coming in, Steve Cooper, that no one's really seen before, I don't think anyone expected a playoff spot for them. Maybe just a mid-table finish at the most. But you've got to hand it to them, haven't you, for getting that 6th spot?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was England under 17s boss before he took the job. So he's obviously used to working with young players, and are able to use his contacts, get the likes of Ryan Brewster and Conor Gallagher through the door, who've made a real impact. And they sort of come from nowhere, and I think that's sort of a real benefit to them getting that last sort of playoff spot, was that no one was really expecting it. There was no pressure on them, and had they missed out, it would have been weren't expecting you to, so go again next season, sort of thing. So it's great. It's been a great achievement for Swansea, and they'll be looking to sort of build on it next season. I think the only issue they'll have is getting the likes of Gallagher and Brewster back after they impressed for Swansea. They're gonna either be off for loan moves in the Premier League, or might actually, in Brewster's case, might get used by Liverpool.
So we'll go down to the sort of the relegation battle, and it was something we'd never seen before, where the team in 13th place, 11 points clear of the relegation places, actually end up going down. Obviously, being deducted 12 points, which was going to come into effect after the end of the season, which just confused everyone, I think, a bit, because I mean, at points in the last day, I just didn't know who was in the relegation, who was meant to be going down or whatever. But you've got to hand it to the team, to the likes of Luton and Barnsley, really, who looks dead and buried with a few games, like say maybe 4 or 5 games to go. Both of those teams sort of look dead and buried, but ended up pulling off miracles. I think. Matt, we'll go with Luton. I mean, I think what done it for them was bringing back Nathan Jones after he left Stoke.
Gone too long.
Yeah, I mean, he's
That's an old school reference. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, he did an excellent job with Luton, even getting them to the brink. I mean, he wasn't there when they got over the line and got promoted, but he got them to the brink of the Championship, and then so you can't blame him for looking at the opportunity of Stoke and trying to get them back to the Premier League. It didn't work out, but it's not worked out for a lot of people at Stoke. So it's good that he's been able to come back and save them, and it'll be interesting to see what you can do next season with a full season in charge of Luton in the Championship. And I think it'd be good for him, a young manager, to sort of rehabilitate his own reputation after it took a little bit of a battering from his time at Stoke. And it's amazing that a team like Luton have not only even got to the Championship, but been able to survive ahead of finishing above bigger and more established teams like Birmingham, Charlton, Wigan, Hull. It's amazing.
Kieran, we earlier on this season we talked about how the likes of Lyle Taylor and a couple of other Charlton players who refused to come back after the lockdown, and now obviously with Charlton being relegated, you can understand their frustrations, obviously, with those players and, well, basically just the shape of the club, really. They're not really in a good way. But, I mean, I just feel so bad for them. Like, I just can't imagine someone someone at the club you supported would do, like, players like that would do something like that. And obviously, it seems that at the end of the day, it's cost them, really, not having those top players playing because they've refused.
Yeah. I mean, I said at the time that I thought it was an absolute joke. Lyle Taylor especially. I said at the time that I thought it was an absolute disgrace, and they basically spat in the face of the club's fans. These players, these people have stood by the club. The club stood by Lyle Taylor as well. He's had a few issues off the pitch as well, I do believe, over the years as well. So, you know what I mean? You can't do that. And I really hope he doesn't get his move. I really hope he doesn't, and then he ends up sitting and rotting in their reserves next season. I really do. It's bad form. I do understand how that feels because it happened to us in 2008-9 Newcastle.
Oh, yes.
Michael Owen did it.
Yep.
We needed a couple of games left in the season. He had picked up a slight knock. He was perfectly fit, perfectly fine to play, but he didn't want to play, and he didn't want to risk himself. He didn't want to risk getting an injury so that he could get a big move in the summer, which he did eventually in Manchester United. But ultimately, it cost us, and we got relegated because with the amount of chances that we had in our last game away at Aston Villa, if we'd had a top quality Ballon d'Or winning striker in the team, probably would have taken one of them and won the game. But as it was, we didn't. We got relegated. He moved on to Manchester United to Pastures New, and he is hated on Tyneside. He is absolutely despised by everybody who calls himself a Geordie and wears a black and white shirt. And I get the feeling that something similar will happen with Lyle Taylor and Charlton, because it's just not on, really, is it? It's just poor form. It shows a bad character. He's a cracking player, but I don't understand why you'd want somebody who's willing to do that. I don't understand why you'd want somebody like that in your squad. Yeah, not for me. No, thank you. Goodbye.
Right, we shall move on to Kieran's favourite game. He knows what it is. It's Brian Blessed, Fact or Fiction, where I give both of you either a fact or fiction about the beloved Brian Blessed. And
at least get his name right. Christ's sake.
Shocking.
Couldn't get the alliteration in one go. But you have to separate the fact from the fiction about
David Blessed.
Is Brian Blessed's real name David?
Fact or fiction? Right, Kieran, as this is your favourite game, we'll start with you. And here's one for you. So, fact or fiction? He once turned down the role of Doctor Who. He was offered the role of Doctor Who and turned it down.
I mean, I would quite like to have seen him play Doctor Who. That would have been funny.
That would have been amazing, wouldn't it?
Quick! The Daleks!
Exterminate! Oh, that's what the Daleks say, but
that is what the Daleks say. But Brian Blessed is that nutty, he probably would have been pointing his pen at them going, exterminate! Yeah, I quite like the idea of that one. I actually still quite like to see that. I know he's old as hell, but
he's 83, but yeah, why not? Stick him in the TARDIS.
We've had a woman Doctor Who. Let's have an old one now. Let's have some age diversity. I think that one is. I'm going to go fact, just out of pure hope.
You know what, Kieran? It is. It is a fact.
Hey!
He
yes.
Apparently turned it. It was offered the role in 1966, and he turned it down. And it eventually went to Tom Baker, who obviously
is a legend.
Probably the most legendary Doctor Who to ever been. Matt.
Put some respect on Christopher Eccleston's name.
No, it's David Tennant, surely.
Yeah, I like David Tennant.
Everyone, after David Tennant, no one watched Doctor Who anymore.
I did. I like Matt. David Tennant is
David Tennant. He's the
David
goat.
Tennant is gold. He's gold.
He's the
gold
goat.
Doctor Who.
Doctor, and I don't think anyone can argue that. Matt, we'll come on to your one. I know you're such a connoisseur of Brian Blessed. You know so much of him, so it's hard. But Here we go. Fact or fiction? He can't grow hair on his legs after getting caught in a fire.
Oh, that took a dark turn after we started laughing. We shouldn't have laughed. after we started laughing, he went after getting caught in a fire. Oh.
It singed his legs, and now he can't.
It singed his legs.
Singed the hair on his legs, and now
he's just got baldy little legs. I really hope that's true.
I've got to be honest, I kind of like the idea that you have thought this up as an idea.
Or have I?
God.
No, looking it up. I can see you scrolling away at a computer.
I'm watching the championship.
So am I, by the way.
Is that what you call it?
2-0 Brentford, for FYI. Just kicked off.
Can't grow any hair on his legs because he got caught in a fire.
Yes, singed all of the hair on his legs and it can't grow back.
I feel like that must be false because I just can't imagine Brian Blessed getting caught in a fire. He just wouldn't. He would beat it. He'd put it out He'd put it out single-handedly. This is a man who sparked the Dalai Lama.
With those lungs, you could blow it out.
See, but
he could blow it out with a whisper.
Brian Blessed in shorts, though. That's the question.
I mean, I'm not sure I want to.
Because there's no hair.
Whether this is true or not, I don't think I want to. Just FYI, like next time Australia get bushfires, I don't need the helicopters or anything. Just get Brian Blessed in, blow.
Just send in Brian Blessed. Yeah, just suspend him from a helicopter.
Yeah. Oh, boom. 3-0 Brentford. 3-0 Brentford.
3-0 Brentford. Cool.
Breaking news. Wow.
This hasn't gone well for comes out in a day or two's time. Right, Matt. Fact or fiction? What are we saying?
Yeah, fiction.
Fiction is the right answer.
Ooh.
That is something I just can't believe.
You put far too much thought into that.
See, I was thinking of putting, like, he can't grow hair in his legs, but then I thought I'm going to add an extra bit of info just to sort of knock you in the direction that it's true. I thought if I just said that, it might be a bit more of a bit more believable that it's fiction. But
that was a good one.
That was a good one.
But well done to the pair of you, getting a point each on that one. Tune in next week for more Brian Blessed Fact or Fiction.
It's the only reason people tune in. They don't care about the football.
No.
Go back about 4 episodes to realise why we play Brian Blessed Fact or Fiction.
Yes. this will slowly morph into the Brian Blessed podcast.
It will. One day we'll get him on as a guest.
It's only a matter of, oh yeah, of course.
We'll have to be quick, he's going to die soon.
Yeah. He'll be in his 90s by then, so imagine it, 94-year-old Brian Blessed on Zoom. That would be...
Daniel shows his legs if we ask him.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, dash your legs, Brian. You got any hair on them?
Get your legs out.
Get your legs out, Ryan. We'll move on to sort of a debate that's sort of been doing the rounds really since the season's finished, or this has sort of been an issue that's sort of been going on for the last year or two, I'd say. Yeah. Is sort of like the current state of the EFL and sort of like the current state of English football in general. I mean, the Premier League isn't affected too much because there's so much money in the Premier League, like they can buy their way out of any situation, but that isn't really the case for many EFL teams, and we've seen many sort of financial issues in the last year or so. Obviously, with Bury getting expelled from the league at the start of the season due to just, completely running out of money and their owner refusing to sell, so they had to expel the club altogether. Bolton just about surviving as a club, obviously, which came at a cost to them in the league, happened to start the season on minus 12 points. And that obviously ended up with them getting relegated to League Two. And And also, with the coronavirus hitting, Wigan had no choice but to go into administration, and they were handed a 12-point deduction, but not until after the season finished. And no, it just seems the EFL just seems to be in a bit of a mess. And I'm just reading an article now from David Conn of the Guardian, like the argument of football sort of needing the EFL needing a reset. Do you sort of agree with that sentiment, Matt, that things need to change?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's definitely some inherent problems within the EFL and sort of the EFL as a governing body when you look at just how many clubs have been affected. And I think the worst thing is when you look at sort of the ways they've been affected, with sort of Wigan with this, who knows whether it's true or not, this thing about the owners supposedly having a bet on them to get relegated, and that's why the club's been put into administration as to give them the. Is it really? There was a video of a Wigan fan talking to Rick Parry, the EFL chairman, and he basically said that was a rumour that he had heard. I'll pull up I might try and pull up the article. So yeah, I mean that's crazy. The idea that some of these sort of owners will get even get through the door and pass the test. There's issues with Birmingham and their ownership. There's a lot of no one's really quite sure who is in charge of the club there. There's obviously the major issue at Hull, which is we've seen the way they've fallen. Somehow they've managed to finish bottom of the league. They're in a crazy situation, and obviously Bury and Bolton, and you look at Charlton as well. With they got rid of Roland Duchâtelet. They weren't happy with his ownership, and they thought have a big celebration. It's going to be it's a new start, and then the new owners have come in, and it's probably he's been even worse. So there's got to be they need to look at their process for approving owners, because quite clearly it's not working. Here we go. There's a video of Rick Parry's discussing Wigan's administration with a fan, and he says there's rumours that there's a bet on them in the Philippines on them being relegated. The previous owner has got gambling interests in the Philippines. And the EFL put out a statement basically saying that is a legitimate. They've said that the video is legitimate, but that it was out of context. There was a wider conversation, but just that statement is just crazy. But yeah, there's clearly a problem with within their sort of owners test, because you're getting far too many owners, like we're seeing at Charlton, Birmingham, Wigan, Bury, that just that they aren't fit and proper to run the football club.
Kieran, as you being a Newcastle fan, you know what it's like to have sort of like a businessman run your club instead of like a football man running your club. So obviously you understand what that can be like, but obviously Newcastle, they're such a big club anyway. They have the financial means to.
To some extent, you're right. I do understand what it's like to have an owner who uses the club for financial gain and to make money, rather than for the success of the club itself. But the experiences I, as a Newcastle fan, have had in that regard are minuscule in comparison with some other football clubs, the likes of whom might don't even really exist now, like Bury, etc., and others who have fallen down and down and down and down to virtually, complete irrelevance. So, yeah, I mean, you are right. I do understand slightly, but what we've seen has been such a minor scale compared to others. It can be hard, like when your football club is stagnating, the way ours is. But our football club has stagnated in the Premier League, mid-table in the Premier League, which is not a bad place to be. That's still hauling in a hell of a lot of money. we have a massive fan base, so we're always going to have gate receipts to fall back on and things like that as well. So,
say with Newcastle, like the existence of the club has never been at risk, where it has been for multiple clubs in the EFL.
Exactly. So, in terms of my issue with all of this is, what's your suggestion? How, like, it's all good and well, you're saying football needs a reset, but how? What you can do? Like, the Premier League is its own entity, so that is irrelevant. The Premier League is its own sort of company entirely, so you can't sort of merge that into it. And I think the main issue is the disparity in sort of pay and money and TV money and stuff like that, and the club worths between the teams at the top of the EFL and the teams at the bottom of the EFL. But that's what's going to happen when you've got the Premier League raking in, where the team who finishes bottom of the Premier League is earning 110 million. They get relegated, they earn a hell of a lot in parachute payments as well. But how are you expecting the EFL to fix that? Like, what do they need to do? You can say they should be sharing the money evenly. They should be sharing the money more evenly, but how? Like, in what way are you going to do that? Because the clubs who have been relegated from the Premier League need those parachute payments. So,
well, there's been a debate that the Premier League clubs should sort of do more to help out, do more financially to help out the clubs below in the footballing pyramid. But do you think we should see that? Do you think there should be like a plan or agreement set in place where
an emergency fund, something like that, possibly? But why would Premier League teams want to? That's the thing, is why the Premier League is a democracy. For anything to happen, 14 of the 20 teams need to vote in favour of it. Why are 14 of the 20 Premier League teams going to vote in favour of giving away their money to help out another team that could eventually challenge them some way far down? Why are they going to do that? Why are they going to give up their money to actively help out another club when they don't need to do that? They're not going to want to do that. The people who run these clubs are ruthless businessmen most of the time. They're just not going to want to do that. And maybe the Premier League or the FA should make it mandatory for the Premier League for them to pay a certain amount into some sort of emergency fund. But that's just going to bring with it all of its own issues. So I don't think that's something you'll ever see.
Yeah, I think the issue is the fact that there is such a disparity between the Championship and the Premier League that you get a lot of sort of these owners will come in, they'll buy a Championship club and they think we'll throw a bunch of money that we don't have as like loans against the club, and it will get us to the Premier League, and then we'll get that money and we'll be fine. We can pay everything back off. But that, hasn't happened for some of these clubs, and that's what's been the issue. So I think there's got to be some sort of, idea of this is how much money your club has, and this is how much money can be put in, or an idea of, you can only put money in if it's the owner says, I am giving you this money, it's not a loan that you have to pay back, or something like that, just to ensure that, if they do want to make this major push for the Premier League and it doesn't, for whatever reason, work out, then, it's the owners losing the money and it's not the club losing the money and having to cut jobs and potentially go out of business altogether. And I think that's the biggest issue, is that there's just been too many loopholes for owners to gamble with the clubs and the club's livelihood and the club's future, rather than saying, I want to get to the Premier League with this club, so I'm going to gamble my money. And I just think that's the biggest issue. There's got to be a way to fix that, and whether it's you can only spend a certain amount beyond your means, or you can only invest a certain amount in the club every season, we'll have to wait and see. Because, there's a lot of clubs who are in a sort of situation where it could go belly up. I'm a Reading fan, and we've got some very rich Chinese owners at the moment, but if they get bored and decide to pull out, then suddenly we could be in a situation like Wigan, where they were going along fine, and then suddenly their money just got pulled right out from under them, and suddenly you've got a load of overheads and no cash to pay it with. So it's definitely an issue. And there's there's a bunch of potential solutions, but which one will work out best? Got to wait and see. We'll have to see if they come up with something.
Yeah, I think you mentioned like owners taking money out against the clubs and stuff like that, and one of the massive major examples for me is Stuart Donald at Sunderland. Obviously, I don't hold much love for Sunderland as a Newcastle fan, but I think what he's done there, it's barely even legal as far as I'm concerned. He's what I was reading in our local paper, which also covers Sunderland, is that he had basically the money that he bought Sunderland with was basically a loan that he took out against the club. That he took out using the club's money and the parachute payments. So he bought the club for somewhere around 35 to 40 million pounds, yet only actually paid 5 million of that himself, and the rest of it was a 12 million loan that that the Sunderland owner Stuart Donald was supposed to pay back, but has since written that money off as because he can't pay it back. So they've since written that loan off entirely. So Sunderland are basically just short 12, 15 million pounds, which is huge for a club in their situation, who are a massive club with a massive stadium with a huge amount of overheads, still paying out some rather hefty wages, and all of a sudden they're just missing out on that much money because they're not bringing anything in barely, especially not at the minute. There's no fans allowed in the grounds for God knows how long. They are not bringing much in anyway because the fans that are allowed in the ground aren't going to the games because they're in League One, and there's no prize money because they're in League One. So he's basically he bought that club with the idea that he was going to get them from League One and bounce straight back up to the Championship, and then it would be fine, and then the money, and basically it would pay for itself. And that getting back to the Championship, he would be able to pay the money back that he's loaned to buy the club, and then sell the club for a profit. So basically, that's what he's done there. Obviously, Sunderland didn't get promoted the first time round. They haven't got promoted the second time round either. So now he's in a bit of a hole. So for me, what you should be looking at here is the EFL and their owners and directors tests, because they are allowing people who cannot afford to buy and maintain these clubs to buy these clubs. And it's been happening for years. We've seen it happen time and time and time again. So yeah, the problem for me, I think the EFL need to institute something wherein if you are to buy an EFL club, you must provide the proof that you can afford to buy the club and afford to maintain the club, regardless of any income from like winning something or totally disregarding promotions and things like that. You must be able to maintain the club where that club is at the time of purchase for a minimum of 5 years. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be allowed to buy the club. And that is the top and bottom of it, is the EFL have got a hell of a lot to answer for in whom they allowed to buy these clubs. And Stuart Donald is the perfect example of that.
I just hope that the EFL find a solution to these problems soon. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot more clubs fall on hard financial times, and maybe even some ending up like Bury did at the start of last season. All right, so we shall finish off on the on Odd One Outs, the results. This is like X Factor on the Sunday, where Dermot O'Leary did the result show.
I've got an answer that I'm fairly confident is correct.
Just a quick recap of the players: Scott Dan, Philip Billing, Rob Green, and Leroy Waffer, for those playing at home. Right. Go on then, Kieran. You got your fairly confident answer.
I'm fairly confident that it's correct, but whether or not it's what you're looking for is a different matter.
Go for it.
My answer is Scott Dan, because he's the only one of the four who's never been promoted to the Premier League.
Ooh, interesting. Matt, what have you got?
See, I went the other way from promotion. I was looking at relegations, and I had Rob Green as the odd one out because he's been relegated from the Premier League 4 times. And the others, I think, 2 or 3.
Right.
Matt, you get 1 point because the correct answer is Rob Green.
Damn.
But the reason is Rob Green is the only one of those four not to be relegated in consecutive seasons.
So
that's
filling
far too
with
niche.
Huddersfield and Bournemouth, with Norwich and Swansea.
For Leroy Fur, and then Scott Dan was. This was a few years back.
This was like
Birmingham City
Birmingham.
and Blackburn.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one. Oh, I was so
That is a
confident.
good
I thought I had it there.
oh, sorry to
there.
rain on your parade there, Kieran. But
Damn.
Matt picks up a cheeky point there. Well done to you.
Got to love
I thought I
Rob
was
Green.
getting 3 points there.
Oh. You will get a 3-pointer, Kieran, this season. We're going to keep going until you do. Season 3,
It's the infinite season.
Of the Christian podcast. Kieran's still looking for his first 3-pointer. But we'll end it there, lads, for this season 3, episode 9 of the Pitchside Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, on SoundCloud, on Spotify. And are we on iTunes, Kieran? I don't think we are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are.
Oh, we are. You can find us on there
Apple
as well.
Podcasts.
And be sure to tune in next week as we're going to do an end of season awards, end of season special next week. So be sure to tune in for that. But for now, we will see you all next week.